Hello everyone and welcome along. It's the final 3 days of home learning, so we really are on the home straight now. Obviously it's our last day now before our kind of 2-day World Book Day celebration, which we're going to start tomorrow. So tomorrow, don't forget to wear your pajamas, whether you're at home or at school. And also do check in with our Jessie Younghusband YouTube channel, because we're going to have lots of videos from all different members of staff for our special Masked Reader celebration. So that's going to be how we are marking World Book Day. Get yourselves onto our YouTube channel. There will be all sorts of stories from all sorts of different members of staff. And it's going to be your job to guess which member of staff that's going to be disguised is reading each story. So I hope you enjoy that tomorrow. For today, we're going to start by thinking about literacy. Now, over the last few days, you have done a fantastic job of learning all about inverted commas. This is, of course, how we punctuate speech. So firstly, perhaps you can pause the video and just have a brief reminder. What can you remember about inverted commas? Okay, hopefully your discussions have included some of the things I'm just going to whiz through now. So we know that inverted commas, they are the punctuation marks which go around anything someone would say. So if you've got a character or a person in your story who's saying something, you're going to need inverted commas. And we've mentioned, haven't we, that mums and dads particularly might still call these speech marks or quotation marks. Inverted commas is the name we're using in school, and that will carry on right the way through your time at JYS and beyond as well. Inverted commas now what they're called. And we've looked over the last few days at how we punctuate those. And also we've thought a little bit about reporting clauses. Now, reporting clauses are the part of the sentence where you say who said it and how they've said it. And we've looked at the fact that we can put them, those reporting clauses at the start or at the end of the sentence. You can flip it around whatever way you want. So it might be, for example, sit down, bellowed Mr. Vass. Or it might be Mr. Vass bellowed, sit down. You can have it whatever order you want. And we also thought yesterday about how we could improve our reporting clauses so that it wasn't just said so-and-so, said so-and-so, said so-and-so all the time. So my top tips yesterday, which was our lesson, was we could use a synonym for the word said. So we use things like yelled instead of said. We could add on an adverb. So we could say how it was said, things like said excitedly. We said that actually we could describe the character in more detail as part of your reporting clause rather than just using their name. So instead of someone's name, you might say things like said the bossy tall boy. And we also said that we could include some fronted adverbials. So it might be things like this. While jumping in the air, Emma said, I'm the champion. So that was our learning over the last few days. So I think we're probably in a really good position now where we can answer these questions. There's a few here. I'd like you to be able to identify which of these sentences has used inverted commas correctly. So pause the video here, and my big tip for this is going to be read the part in inverted commas out loud and see if that's actually what the person is saying. We know, of course, it's really important we get the meaning right so that our reader understands what we want to say. So pause the video here and see if you can get these right. Hopefully you've done that. So first one, I don't like carrots, said the little girl. So it's that one there. It's time for bed, said Dad. And again, if we read it out and kind of check it, we know that Dad wouldn't be saying, it's time for bed, said. Might rhyme, it doesn't really make sense. So we know that it's that second one. And finally, for number 3, it's write the date in your book, the teacher told the children. It's 4 more on the next page. So again, just pause the video here and have a go at these ones too. I'll see you in a second. Okay, and carrying on then, so we've got, let down your hair, the knight shouted to the princess. Abracadabra, said the witch as she cast the spell. The cat chased me through the garden, whispered the mouse. And finally, Jim ate all the jam, Katie told their mum. Naughty Jim. Okay, so there's your answers there. Right then, have another look at the section I've got here. While I'm reading out, think about whether this would be a good piece of writing you might see in a book, for example. It's a little dialogue between 2 characters, in this case called Fred and Bill. Hello, said Fred. Hi, Bill replied. Can I come to your house? Fred asked. No problem, said Bill. Great, I'm looking forward to it, Fred responded. I'll ask my mum to do us a pizza, Bill said. What do you reckon then? Any hands up? What do you think? I would say it's not bad. And looking at it, they've got the punctuation right, which is good. We've learnt that this week. There's also some other nice things they've done. They've included some synonyms for said, so they've tried to sort of make it a bit more exciting with words like replied and asked and responded. But I think this is guilty of one of the things that as teachers we see all the time, and that it's people will use just speech in their story, which is okay and it's not bad, but there's not really any description whatsoever in here. So what we often like to say is that it's really good to include a mix of speech like this, which we've learned how to do this week, but also description as well, because otherwise it can get a bit boring. No one likes to read a story where it's just speech all the way through. We want some description in there as well, so we know what we're picturing. So we're going to do today, we're going to try to combine this skill of punctuating speech in inverted commas, which we've learned over the last few days, with this skill, which we learned last week. So try to cast your minds back. We learned this technique that we called show and don't tell. And this was where instead of just telling our reader how a character was feeling, we showed the reader how the character was feeling by describing their movements, their actions, their behavior, and so on. So our example last week was, we're not going to write things like Bill was tired of waiting, which is just us telling our reader that. We would instead write things like this. Bill tapped his feet, puffed out his cheeks, and looked at his watch. And that would be a really nice bit of description, which would help our reader paint a picture in their mind of what it was that was actually going on. So we're going to try to combine these two things over the next few days. We're going to try to combine speech with this really good new description technique, which we've learned as well. And what we're going to be doing tomorrow and on Friday is making our own short story as part of World Book Day. It should be really good fun. So you're going to make your own character. Tomorrow you're going to draw or paint or colour in your own character. And then we're going to actually write a short story involving that character and make our own book for World Book Day. Now, today we're going to practice that a little bit, and we're just going to do a short piece of writing that's going to practice putting those two techniques together. And we're going to try to combine those two features then. So we're going to try to combine inverted commas for speech, so we're going to have some characters saying something, and showing our reader how they're feeling by using that show and don't tell technique. So we're combining the two techniques that we've learned in this unit. And today we're going to practice that by using those techniques together to write a short scene with some speech. So here is today's date and title. Those of you in school, you can pause the video here and get that written down. And on the right there, I've put in the things I'm really keen for you to include today. So we're definitely going to want inverted commas for our speech. We've learned over the last few days, we're definitely going to punctuate our speech really well. I'd really like you to use some great reporting clauses with synonyms for said and maybe some adverbs. So don't just put said so-and-so. That's really boring. So let's try to improve that and maybe say bellowed so-and-so, or said Fred loudly, something like that, just to improve our reporting clause a little bit. And I'd also like you to include some of this show and don't tell technique, which we've been looking at as well, to describe how the character's feeling. Now, your scene today is going to be between a teacher and a pupil. So you're going to have two characters and they're going to be having a conversation with each other. Now, obviously, we're writing about a teacher. You're probably picturing me. However, I'm thinking actually, let's try to have a slightly more interesting character, a slightly different character, because Mr. Vass is very boring, far too nice to make an interesting character in a story, I think. So let's try to think of a teacher. Maybe actually we could write about a bit of a mean teacher. So that's what one of our characters can be. We're going to have quite a mean teacher and a pupil. Now, I went on Google Images and I tried to find a picture of a mean teacher. And I saw Google, right, mean looking teacher, horrible looking teacher. Look what came up. Unbelievable. It's almost identical, isn't it? Couldn't believe it. So there you go. There's a nice mean teacher. Pretty spot on cartoon of Mr. Vass there. And there's a very sad looking pupil. So here are my two characters. Got a mean teacher and a sad looking pupil, and we're going to do a little bit of writing between these two. Now, I spent just sort of 30 seconds or so thinking of a name for my characters and also what emotion I wanted them to be feeling. Because I think if we've got the emotion as well in our minds, that's going to really help us when we do our show and don't tell technique. So it might be worth, maybe on a whiteboard if you're in school, or a rough bit of paper if you've got one, just actually having a quick go at naming your character, saying which character they are, and writing down their sort of feelings, how they're feeling. It doesn't need to be very long. I had a quick go myself and I said, again, we're not doing Mr. Vass. No, we want some really horrible, mean one. So I'm not going to do Mr. Vass. I'm going to do Mr. Crass. Completely different person, as you can see from the picture. So here we go. I've got Mr. Crass, the angry teacher, and I've got Sarah, the sad pupil. So that's just my kind of little mini bit of planning there, where I've said in advance what their emotions are, and I've got their names as well. So I've got in my mind what I'm going to be describing when I'm doing show and don't tell. So now I need to get writing. So I'm going to model a little bit of writing on the board for you here so that you can kind of get an idea of what kind of thing we're looking for. And then obviously after that, you're going to have a go yourself. So I'm going to start with Mr. Crass, this horrible, mean, angry teacher. Now I want to start with a bit of show and don't tell. So I want to not just say Mr. Crass was angry. I want to actually show and describe what Mr. Crass was doing that tells our reader that he's angry, or shows our reader that he's angry. Now, what do you do when you're angry? I think Mr. Crass, I'm going to say Mr. Crass's face turned red. And that's a really good bit of show and don't tell, isn't it? So I'm going to actually colour that in. I'll have that in red as well. Do you know what? I think actually I can improve that even more, couldn't it? I could turn that into a bit of a simile. What could we say it's as red as? Turned as red as, can you think of something that's red? I'm going to say as red as a tomato. Mr. Crass's face turned as red as a tomato. So there's a really good bit of description there where I've not just said he's angry, I've shown how we know he's angry. I might say as well his feet stamped. That would be quite a good one, wouldn't it? He stamped his feet as he looked at the piece of work. So I want to imagine that this mean, horrible teacher, Mr. Crass, is looking at this piece of work and he's feeling really angry about it. Right, now I'm going to have him saying something. So I'm going to need my inverted commas, aren't I? We know we start off our speech with inverted commas. I'm going to say, what do you mean you only got 9 out of 10 on your spellings? Now again, hopefully this is nothing like me. Hopefully this is a completely different teacher. This is Mr. Crass, mean, horrible teacher. Obviously, I know as long as you're trying your best on your spellings, I don't mind what you get. So here we go. What do you mean you only got 9 out of 10 on your spellings? There, I've used my inverted commas correctly, so I can put that in. Definitely use those. And you'll notice I've got my question mark there, because this is a question to Sarah. My question mark there is coming inside my inverted commas. We know we need that. And now I need to do a really good reporting clause. This is going to say who said it, obviously Mr. Crass, and how he said it. So I could just do something really boring, couldn't I? I could just say, also a little slip up there, I put Mr. Vass. It's not me, honest. Mr. Crass said. So there you go, Mr. Crass said. However, we know, don't we, that we can do much better than just said. So can you think of a really good word, another synonym that means the same as or similar to said? Maybe you can think of a good one for me now. I wonder if anyone's putting their hand up and having some good suggestions for said. I'm going to change it to bellowed. And I'm also going to put in a nice adverb, so I'm going to say how he bellowed it. I'm going to say bellowed it loudly. So I've got a nice synonym there, and I've got a good adverb too. So if I just think back to my sort of aims here, I think I've included all 3 of the things I wanted to include. So I've got some really good show and don't tell for Mr. Crass. I've got my inverted commas for speech, and I've also tried to improve my reporting clause a little bit there by, rather than just saying Mr. Crass said, I've got Mr. Crass bellowed loudly. Now, my next paragraph is going to be describing Sarah and how Sarah's feeling. Poor old Sarah. Again, hope no one feels like this in Mr. Vass's class. So here is Sarah, and she's feeling really sad. Mr. Crass has been really mean to her. So how can we show that Sarah's feeling sad? What would you do if you were feeling sad? And say, Sarah slumped in her chair and put her head on the desk. she's feeling really sad. I think that's a good way of showing that she's feeling sad. I might even, let's sort of really hand this up a little bit. Let's say she began to cry as well. A tear rolled down her cheek and landed on her. This is tragic, isn't it? I hope I never ever make anyone feel like this. This is obviously a work of fiction. So here we go. We've got our nice show and don't tell there, which I think we've done really effectively. So let's put that over here. Got our show and don't tell in red. And now let's have Sarah saying something. I miss my old teacher, Mr. Vass. Sarah says. Now, I'll come back to how I'm going to punctuate that. I'm going to ask you how I do that in a second, but let's just add on a nice reporting clause as well. So let's have Sarah. Well, I'm going to say, what's a nice synonym for said? I think she's probably going to be whispering it to her friend so that Mr. Crass doesn't tell her off. Sarah whispered to her friend. There we go. So I've got a really nice reporting clause there. Oops. Sarah whispered to her friend. That's much better than just Sarah said, isn't it? So that's a really nice reporting clause. So I'm going to put that in purple. I wonder if you've spotted the one thing that we need to add to the punctuation here. It's this sentence I'm looking at. What's the one thing that's missing? Can you spot it? I miss my old teacher, Mr. Vass, Sarah whispered to her friend. So let's put in our inverted commas in green. That's good. But what's the one missing thing? We need a comma in here, don't we? Yeah, we need to separate our speech from our reporting clause with a comma. So there you go. Right then, here is my example. I've got my two characters and they're having a bit of a conversation, but rather than just having line after line of speech, I've tried to break it up a little bit with some show and don't tell description as well. Let's just read it back and check we're happy with it then. So, Mr. Crass's face turned as red as a tomato. He stamped his feet as he looked at the piece of work. What do you mean you only got 9 out of 10 on your spellings? Mr. Crass bellowed loudly. Sarah slumped in her chair and put her head on the desk. A tear rolled down her cheek and landed on her spelling book. I miss my old teacher, Mr. Vass, Sarah whispered to her friend. Oh, sad story, but hopefully a good piece of writing. So I'd like you to try to create just a little mini scene like this today where we've got two characters. They're having a bit of a conversation, so we've got a bit of speech from both of them. But crucially, we want to have some show and don't tell in there as well. So it's not just all speech. We're trying to break it up a little bit. And this is the kind of writing we're going to try to do tomorrow in our own story for World Book Day with our own character. Okay. I should say as well, if you want to have a little think overnight in the next 24 hours or so about what type of story you want to write for World Book Day. I'm going to leave it completely up to you. So you might just want to start having a think about what kind of character you are going to write about. But that's for tomorrow. Have a think about that after today's lesson. Okay, have fun writing these, and I look forward to seeing your little scene. Hopefully you can make me a bit nicer than Mr. Crass. Okay, have fun everyone. Enjoy.